The crystalline chamber shimmered with refracted starlight as the delegates of the Galactic High Council took their seats. Hundreds of species, each in their own hover thrones, aligned in concentric circles facing the grand dais. Silence fell as the speaker of the council rose, a towering figure with glistening carapace plates, his multifaceted eyes cold and calculating. At the center of the hall, standing alone on a raised platform, was Ambassador Laila Vas, representing humanity. Her stance was composed, her posture regal but without arrogance. The speaker's voice resonated across the chamber in perfect translation. Human delegation, you have benefited from our protection and guidance for 2 centuries. Yet you remain unpredictable. This unpredictability disrupts balance. The Council, by unanimous vote, now issues an ultimatum. You will surrender your advanced technologies and integrate under Council oversight, or face systematic enforcement measures. There was a heavy silence, broken only by the faint hum of recording drones circling overhead. Across the chamber, alien delegates from worlds both ancient and young watched with interest, some amused, others skeptical, a few even sympathetic. Laila was tilted her head slightly, her expression soft but unreadable. The human guards at her side stood motionless, wearing elegant navy uniforms, their presence a reminder that humanity didn't arrive unprepared. The speaker continued. Should you decline this generous offer, the consequences will be severe. Your worlds will be embargoed. Your exploration rights revoked. Your colonies dismantled. Resistance will not be tolerated. His final words hung heavy in the air, sharpened by the subtle vibrations in the crystalline walls. Laila took a single breath and stepped forward. The sound of her boots against the polished platform was almost musical. She raised her eyes, locking onto the speakers, and then let her gaze sweep slowly across the council. Her voice was steady, clear, and calm. We thank the council for its honesty. There was a murmur of surprise. It is not often one receives such blunt intentions. Humanity has always valued clarity. She clasped her hands behind her back, her presence warm and composed despite the tension. We will, of course, return with our official response in galactic hours. There were ripples of confusion and amusement. Did she not understand the threat? The speaker leaned forward, his tone mocking. Ambassador Vas, I advise you not to delay. The galaxy has little patience. She smiled gently. We understand. And we trust the galaxy will have patience enough to witness our answer. Her tone carried a weight beyond defiance, it was assurance. A quiet confidence that made even the most skeptical delegates sit straighter. Laila was turned gracefully, descending the platform without another word. The human guards fell into step with her, silent as shadows. As they exited the hall, the council chamber erupted into whispers and speculation. Had humanity accepted defeat with a smile, or was there something more behind those calm, bright eyes? The speaker turned to his aides, clicking his mandibles softly. Monitor their transmissions. I want to know their every move. But even he could not ignore the faint flicker of uncertainty that tugged at the edge of his composure. Outside the chamber, in the west corridor lined with swirling energy patterns and floating murals depicting millennia of council history, Laila walked with serene purpose. Her chief strategist, Lieutenant Merrick, leaned in. Ma'am, should we prepare defensive protocols? She shook her head softly. Not yet. Let them wander. He hesitated before asking, You think they'll push? They always push, she said, eyes shining with a strange amusement. They cannot imagine a response that isn't submission or violence. That is why ours will shake them. They reached the shutter bay, where the sleek human diplomatic vessel waited. As they ascended the ramp, Laila paused for a moment to look back at the towering council building, its crystalline spires reaching into the sky. They think power is intimidation, she murmured. They forget there's power in kindness. And power in knowing exactly when to stop playing nice. The shutter doors sealed with a soft hiss, and the vessel lifted off, slipping into orbit with effortless grace. On the bridge, her communications officer turned toward her. All frequencies are open for transmission, Ambassador. Are we ready? Laila sat, folded her hands on her lap, and nodded. We are. As the shuttle glided toward the rendezvous with Earth's diplomatic fleet, the entire galaxy waited. Some expected surrender. Others anticipated defiance. But none were prepared for what humanity was about to do. The council chamber remained abuzz after the human delegation's departure, speculation crackling in every corner. Some delegates laughed at the perceived meekness of the human ambassador, others spoke in hushed tones of uncertainty. But far from the Christian Hall, aboard the orbiting human flagship Horizon Dawn, preparations were underway that would soon rewrite the tone of every whisper across the galaxy. Commandant Jalen Knox stood on the observation deck, arms folded, watching the council's capital world spin serenely beneath them. The atmosphere was calm, but the tension in the air was electric. He turned as Ambassador Laila was entered, her composure still untouched by the theatrics of the council. They gave their ultimatum, she said simply. Jalen nodded. And you responded with patience. She smiled faintly. Patience has always been one of our strongest weapons. But now it's time to teach them something else. Below them, dozens of human ships waited in low orbit, not warships, but scientific vessels, exploration crafts, medical stations. The fleet had been assembled not for battle but for demonstration. Laila touched a console, and holograms flickered to life around them. Images of embargoes, star charts marking colonies forced into isolation, reports of species quietly suffering under council authority because they had no voice to speak for them. The council fears unpredictability, she said, her tone thoughtful. What they truly fear is freedom that refuses to ask for permission. Jalen raised an eyebrow. And what's the plan, Ambassador? She turned to him, her gaze steady and warm. We show them exactly who we are. Not with weapons, not yet, but with something more dangerous. Kindness without asking. Generosity without permission. Across the fleet, transmissions crackled to life. Orders were given. Medical frigates broke formation and descended toward council planets that had long been denied aid because of political posturing. Cargo ships filled with food and clean water surged toward impoverished colonies blacklisted by bureaucracy. Advanced communication satellites were deployed to remote regions the council had kept isolated for control. On the planet below, as council enforcers scrambled to react, they found themselves overwhelmed not by attacks but by overwhelming acts of support. In the slums of city, human doctors arrived to treat children sick with diseases the council deemed too insignificant to prioritize. In the deserts of Prime, water filtration units were installed by human engineers, transforming barren settlements overnight. Entire education modules streamed for free into learning centers of worlds long forgotten by the council's core. On the council world itself, holographic projectors lit up public squares, displaying messages in dozens of alien scripts. You are not alone. You are seen. Council security forces tried to shut them down, but each time when signal was cut, three more took its place. Children gathered in the streets to watch human volunteers distribute warm meals, clothing, and medical kits. Inside the council chamber, chaos erupted. Reports flooded in, not of violence, but of unstoppable kindness spreading faster than any force they could contain. The speaker bellowed, demanding containment, but there was nothing to contain. The council had spent centuries perfecting intimidation, fear, and punishment. They had no strategy for responding to an act of defiance as pure as help. Back aboard the Horizon Dawn, Laila watched the feeds in silence. We are giving them the thing they never understood, she said softly. Jalen stood beside her, awe in his voice. We're not fighting them. No, she confirmed. We're showing them how irrelevant their threats are when faced with a force that doesn't ask for permission to do good. Across the stars, human ships arrived like beacons of light. Council enforcers found themselves unable to justify stopping medics treating plague outbreaks, Aor volunteers building homes for the homeless, Aor teachers offering education to those who had been denied it for generations. Arresting kindness only exposed cruelty. Punishing generosity only revealed oppression. The council's silence turned to sputtering rage, then to confusion, and finally to fear. For the first time in generations, their power was not only challenged but made to look petty and small. They had threatened threats, and humanity's answer was soft, and that softness shook them more than any fleet of warships ever could. On media channels, attempts to spin the story as unlawful interference collapsed under public outcry. Alien citizens took to the streets in support of the humans. If this is rebellion, when viral broadcast from a young alien student declared, then I choose rebellion. Laila was sat back in her chair, watching messages flood in from species they'd never spoken to before, each one a quiet, a message of hope. Her voice was soft but certain. Let them try to threaten us again. The council chamber was no longer filled with dismissive laughter or confident threats. Instead, silence weighed heavily in the West Hall, broken only by the whisper of hurried footsteps and tense murmurs between delegates. The grand projection screens flickered with news reports from across the galaxy. Human ships were everywhere, delivering aid, building infrastructure, healing wounds left untended by council neglect. The visuals on the screens were impossible to twist. Smiling children of dozens of species receiving medicine, families drinking clean water for the first time, entire communities watching human engineers rebuild crumbling structures. In every sector once forgotten by the empire, humanity had become the symbol of hope and defiance. At the heart of the council days, the High Speaker's knuckles whitened around his staff. His voice trembled with restrained fury as he finally addressed the assembly. This insolence cannot stand. They flaunt our laws, undermine our authority, and spread chaos in the guise of charity. But his words landed hollow. Delegates shifted uneasily in their seats, their loyalty crumbling as images of relief and joy flooded their feeds. These were not acts of chaos. These were the very things they themselves had failed to provide for generations. In the far corner of the chamber, Ambassador Laila was stood quietly, arms clasped behind her back. Her human delegation had not been summoned, yet she had come anyway, and none dared remove her. Her calm presence was more disarming than any fleet. The speaker turned toward her with rage. What say you to this defiance, Ambassador? You spit in the face of Aordan and threaten the stability of this galaxy. Laila met his glare with serene confidence. We threaten nothing. We only reveal what has always been unstable, fear masquerading as Aordan, and control masquerading as peace. A low murmur rippled through the chamber. On the screens behind her, a new feed appeared, a massive gathering on the council world itself. Aliens of every species, council citizens who had long accepted silence, now filled the streets in peaceful protest. Human volunteers worked alongside them, erecting food stalls and medical tents. Your people do not fear instability, Laila continued. They fear being forgotten. We simply chose to remember them. The speaker slammed his staff down. Enough. The council will not be undermined by grand gestures and propaganda. But even as he spoke, new images appeared on the feed. Council enforcers attempting to arrest human doctors in the slums of city, only to be surrounded by crowds that linked arms and refused to move. Attempts to confiscate humanitarian supplies on Prime were met with peaceful, by thousands. The broadcasts were unedited, raw, and impossible to ignore. The tension in the chamber shifted palpably as one delegate after another glanced toward Laila, their expressions no longer hostile but questioning. These were the moments leaders weighed history against their own survival. The council had always thrived on control, but control was slipping between their fingers, and not by war but by compassion that exposed every crack in their foundation. An unexpected voice broke the silence, the delegate from the a species long loyal to the council. What crime is it, she asked softly, to do what we have failed to do? The chamber fell utterly silent. One by one, Delegates voiced similar sentiments. The council's authority was unraveling in real time, pulled apart not by rebellion but by undeniable proof that leadership had failed where kindness prevailed. The speaker turned desperate, his voice losing its authority. They will tear us apart. Laila stepped forward for the first time, her voice calm but ringing clear. No, she said. They will only tear apart what should never have existed, a system built on fear, not trust, on punishment, not protection. She extended her hand, palm open, toward the assembly. This is your chance to lead differently. Not through threats, but through partnership. We do not seek to conquer. We seek to remind the galaxy that strength is found in unity, not dominion. The chamber doors swung open, and council guards entered, not with weapons drawn but escorting civilians, representatives of the people filling the streets outside. The chamber watched in stunned silence as those voices, once distant and dismissed, finally walked among them. A young alien mother carrying a child stepped forward, her voice trembling but resolute. They came when you would not. They fed us when you denied us. They healed our sick when you turned away. If that is defiance, then I stand with it. The speaker's staff clattered to the floor. His power had ended not with a war, but with words and open hands. Laila bowed her head slightly. Your threats shook the galaxy, she said softly. But our answer reminded it to hope. The dawn broke slowly over the council's grand plaza, once a monument to power and fear, now a place alive with transformation. The banners of oppression that had hung for centuries had been stripped away, replaced by new flags that fluttered in soft morning winds. Each banner displayed stars connected by bright lines, symbols of unity, hope, and possibility. The wide stone square that once echoed with orders and decrees was now filled with the gentle hum of conversation, laughter, and the sounds of rebuilding. Humans worked with beings of all shapes and sizes, lifting beams, planting trees, repairing fractured monuments, and painting vivid murals along the plaza walls. Commandant Elena Carter stood near the fountain at the plaza's center, watching as saplings were lowered into fresh soil by pairs of hands, some scaled, some furred, some meta, and some human. The first rays of sunlight caught the dewdrops on the leaves and refracted into rainbows across faces that were once bowed in submission but now shone with joy. A small child tugged on her sleeve, offering her a bright blue flower. For hope, the child said in perfect, careful Terran. Elena knelt, accepting the gift with a smile that softened the sharp lines of her uniform. For hope, she echoed, tucking the flower behind her ear. All around the plaza, change was tangible. Alien artisans sketched designs for a grand archway that would span the entire plaza, a gateway of stars, each stone to be engraved with the name of a liberated world. Human engineers adjusted floating light spheres that would glow softly by night, illuminating paths to gardens and gathering species. A group of children painted alongside human artists, their long tendrils dancing in excitement as their brushes filled the wall with vibrant colors of interconnected galaxies. Elena's communicator chimed softly. Ambassador Laila Vasa's voice came through, warm but steady. The last council ship has departed. No resistance. They left behind their flags. Elena nodded to herself, glancing up to where those imperial banners had once hung. In their place, a giant projection hovered, Earth's open hand reaching toward a field of stars, now surrounded by symbols contributed by hundreds of worlds. Underneath in soft, shifting holographic script were the words, "Together, we rise." Across the square, crates of medical supplies and tools were being unloaded by volunteers. A council security droid, once a symbol of fear, stood by and offered assistance. Its programming had not changed, only its purpose. It lifted a crate, adjusted its servos, and followed a group of human doctors toward the new infirmary being built from council offices. Elena marveled at the simple grace of it, old tools reshaped for new beginnings. As the sun climbed higher, musicians began to play. The melodies drifted across the plaza, some Terran, some some unfamiliar to Elena but beautiful all the same. Children danced in wide circles, holding hands, leaping between shadows and beams of sunlight. Adults of every species gathered in groups, sharing food from makeshift stalls, recipes from across the galaxy, served without currency or obligation. The mood was light, almost surreal in its peace. For the first time in generations, this place was no longer a stage for domination, but a home for collaboration. Elena found herself standing near the grand dais, where once the high speaker would pronounce decrees. Now, it was a platform for stories and laughter. A young woman stepped up, raising her voice so it carried over the crowd. They told us we could not change. That power was absolute. But here you are, builders, dreamers, healers. Here we are. Proof. Her words were met not with applause but with quiet nods, a shared understanding that didn't need spectacle to be true. The movement turned even more poignant when the delegate, once the staunchest defendant of council authority, stepped forward. She removed the ceremonial collar from her neck and placed it at the foot of the dais. The weight we bear was not honor, she said softly. It was fear disguised as loyalty. I choose differently now. Without another word, she joined a group of human children who eagerly handed her brushes to paint on the growing mural. As the sun reached its zenith, a gentle chime sounded, and floating drones released clusters of luminescent petals into the air. They drifted slowly, sparkling like stars, falling over the plaza and settling on heads and shoulders, delicate reminders of what had been lost and what had been found. Elena turned in a slow circle, taking in the sight, banners of unity above, hands joined in labor and celebration below, a city reborn not through conquest but through kindness and resilience. She allowed herself a deep breath, filled with the scent of fresh earth, warm food, and blossoms on the breeze. The empire had crumbled, not in battle but in a single, undeniable truth. Threats may shake the galaxy, but hope rebuilds it.